Welcome back for another episode of the Unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer, and we are here for the WCC championship game. We are at the final day of WCC play, and of course, it is Zags and Gaels. And it is no surprise that it's obviously these two teams. These two have been the best two teams in the conference all season long. It was almost a foregone conclusion. It usually is a foregone conclusion that these two will meet up in the Vegas title game. And here we are with one game left to go to decide the whole thing. And I'll make some quick notes about just like the two games that occurred on Monday night, and both were great games. Saint Mary's jumped out to a huge lead on BYU, only to see BYU really make a strong push in the second half. That has been their MO all year long. And they made it chippy. They made it interesting toward the end. But St. Mary's was able to pull out the win. There were some concerns, especially late in that game, and we'll get into that as we talk about the Gonzaga Saint Mary's matchup. And then in the nightcap, Gonzaga and USF. I think a lot of people thought that Gonzaga was going to run away early, and it did look like that's exactly what was going to happen in those first 4 or 5 minutes. Gonzaga jumped out to a huge lead, and it looked like they had all the momentum. But then USF slowed that to a crawl. USF slowly got back into that game. They slowly got back into that game on the back of Khalil Shabazz. To no surprise, after he dropped 38 on Saturday, he had another great outing on Monday night in what turned out to be his final WCC game. It was a great performance. It was great to see the embrace of the Gonzaga players afterward of Khalil and how much he has really meant to this league, just how respected he is in this league. His name is now all over the USF record book. He really, really has personified that program over the last few years, along with Jamari Bouye, who graduated a year ago. He just is, and I'm going to steal the word from Andy Patton as he and I met up yesterday to talk about it. He's just a baller, and that's the best way to describe Khalil. He just goes out, he plays 100% all game long. You just see how much it matters to him, how much the game matters to him. And we got to see that on display. Hats off to USF. Hats off to the way they came out yesterday. We're within two late in that second half before Gonzaga eventually pulled away. And for Gonzaga, Anton Watson was incredible in that first half, and then he came through late. One point, I think it was Anton Watson 13, USF 10. Watson got off to such a great start. He was being challenged to shoot from three, and he made a couple early attempts. He was all over the floor. He was incredible on Monday, and a lot of people he was left off the WCC first team. He was left off the second team. He was somehow on the honorable mention team, which I do think is a travesty. He should not have been on the honorable mention team. He should have been higher than that. And he showed you why on Monday. So again, he was great. Drew Timme did his normal thing. He had a really good game as well. But USF got back into that game. They crawled their way back into that game because they were not getting much from the guards, at least early on, and most of the way through the second half. There wasn't a whole lot out of Rasheer Bolton. He hit a couple of clutch threes. It was almost where was Rasheer Bolton for about 30 minutes of the game? And in the last 10 minutes, he hits a couple clutch shots, reminding you why he's there, reminding you how good he is. And you can talk about they didn't cover, whatever else, blah, blah, blah. when Gonzaga needed it most, their guys came through. And I think that's been really the mindset and the feeling about this Gonzaga team really all year long. It's while they haven't been able to pull away from as many teams as we're used to seeing, they're not as good defensively as we're used to seeing, blah, 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 blah. They come through when it matters most. And that's what we have seen routinely over and over and over and over again all year long. When the chips are down and Gonzaga needs a bucket, someone steps up to get them that bucket. And last night, that was Rasheer Bolton a few times. That was Anton Watson. Julian Strawther had a little bit of a quiet game. He actually had 9 points in the first half, and then we did not get a whole lot from him after that. But it wasn't necessary. Gonzaga got the job done, and we're going to see what happens in this title game tonight. And that's where we are. The WCC championship game at the Orleans Arena. The 1 seed Saint Mary's against the 2 seed Gonzaga. The number 16 Gaels against the number 9 Zags. And going into this one, I mean, there's no surprises for either of these teams. These two teams know each other so well. They know what the game plan is. They know how to disrupt each other. And as I talked about, one of the things that concerned me in the St. Mary's game, I think it's the very first thing we're going to see in this one. Has St. Mary's figured out how to break the press? We saw it in Spokane. Gonzaga came out and had a 3-quarter press on St. Mary's from almost the jump, and it disrupted that offense so much that it gave Gonzaga the momentum in that first half in Spokane. It really took St. Mary's out of what they were trying to do on the offensive end, and St. Mary's had no answer really for it. Their length, their athleticism really bothered the Gaels, and that's problematic. And with a week and a half or so to kind of work that out, think about it, work on a plan. How do we do this? You're thinking there's going to be a pretty good response, that they're going to be able to combat that. And so going into the BYU game, I thought, well, the Cougars are probably going to implement this at some point. They're not going to be able to do it all game because they played a couple of games already this weekend. But I thought they would throw it in there. And they did finally throw it in late, and it looked just like what we saw in Spokane. The first few possessions were completely threw St. Mary's out of their rhythm, completely threw them for a loop. They had a hard time getting it across half court. It disrupted their offense. Can start to look at individuals. There were a few times like they broke the press and had opportunities for easy layups, and Kyle Bowen, like one of the guys, like he was that 4-man outlet right at the right near half court, had an opportunity multiple times to get easy buckets down low. Mitchell Saxon was wide open. Joshua Jefferson was down there, and they slow played it, brought it back out. And I know that's to an extent that's what the offense is. That's what they try to do. But you got to figure out a way to punish teams who use the press that often. And we didn't see it really against BYU, even though it looks like they figured out how to break the press, but still could not get back into an offensive rhythm, even once they did. I thought BYU did a really good job late. They got more physical with St. Mary's. They were able to get in under them a little bit more. They kind of got in, not into their heads, but like they were frustrating St. Mary's a lot more in that second half. And that's not something that can't happen tonight against Gonzaga. Because you should expect that Gonzaga is going to run that press out right away. You should expect that you're going to see those same looks, that same pressure from the jump. Because why wouldn't you? Like, you saw how successful it was just a couple weeks ago in Spokane. You saw how successful it turned out to be against BYU. What's going to change for tonight? What can change in a night for St. Mary's and the Gaels to realize, or not realize, but like, what can they fix? Is it mentality? Is it scheme? What can they do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Because everybody knows, everybody sees exactly how you should disrupt their offense. And all it will take is a couple of times of breaking that press, making Gonzaga actually be punished for using the press, for them to back off, at least all the time. So big. I'm talking about big key for St. Mary's is that you can't let the press get to you. You have to be able to break it. You have to get off. You have to get easier offense. And in the first half against Gonzaga, in both games, that was something that St. Mary's just did not do well. They did not get off to a good offensive game in either one. They didn't shoot well in the game in Moraga in the first half. They got discombobulated by the press in the second game. They have to get off to a good start. They have to break the press. They have to make their open shots. These are all necessities in the first half. If St. Mary's is going to have that game, Alex Dukas is going to get those open looks. They scheme it well enough that he's going to get those looks. Logan Johnson, I think he's still going to be treated as someone you're going to give him that 3-point shot. They will play the lane, I think, a little bit more. Mahaney looked a lot more confident in the game on Monday, so I think he's starting to feel out teams now that he's kind of one of the more primary defensive assignments. He's now started to make that adjustment back. I think Mitchell Saxon is going to be critical in this game. He did not have a good game up in Spokane. I don't expect that to happen again. I expect him to be a bit much larger contributor to this one. And maybe an X factor, maybe someone to watch out for is going to be Joshua Jefferson. He played really well up in Spokane. He had some solid minutes yesterday as well. Everything doesn't have to go right for St. Mary's, but they have to have that balanced contribution across the board. They have to take care of the basketball. They didn't do that in Spokane. They have to break the press. They didn't do that in Spokane. They have to shoot well and play well in the first half. They didn't do well that in either of the two games. And then they have to close. And they do have one of the best closers in the game in WCC and Aiden Mahaney. So if you're looking at keys, it's get off to a good start offensively, break the press, and close out the halves. For Gonzaga, Gonzaga has been playing well for about a month and a half now, really well for about a month and a half. And for them, I think it's the containment of Mahaney and Johnson. Easier said than done, but I think that's one of the biggest keys. Because what you want to do is you want to be able to have to force the others to beat you. Make Alex Dukas a playmaker. Make Kyle Bowen a playmaker. Force Mitchell Saxon to become a volume shooter. Get to their bench, because this is not a very deep St. Mary's team. Because if you get past Saxon, it's going to be either Jefferson or Wessels. Harry Wessels has not had that great of games as of late. He's definitely shown more of that typical freshman, those typical freshmen like mistakes, miscues that they usually see. And that's why you haven't seen him all too much in games as of late. That's why he didn't play all too much against BYU. I feel like Anton Watson is going to continue to be a key. He had a really good game in Spokane against St. Mary's. He had a great game against USF just last night. He's going to be critical to what they do. And now here's going to be the thing. It's like, it's almost kind of pick your poison, Watson or Timmy, because both have been playing so well as of late. And then you always kind of like have to key in on Julian Strother. He has not had that many good games against St. Mary's. He had 11 in the last game. He had 10 in the game before that. So Strother has not been able to get his usual output. He doesn't usually shoot all that terribly well against St. Mary's, and credit St. Mary's for doing a good job of trying to take him away and force him into difficult shots. But that's something you also have to watch out for. But the key to me, the biggest offensive key, is Malachi Smith. He is so critical as that first guy off the bench to really giving Gonzaga that second offensive look, that second wave of energy that they needed. Last night we saw actually like the better pairing of guards throughout the course of the night was probably Malachi Smith and Hunter Salas, rather than the starters, Hickman and Bolton. And I think we're going to see more of those. I think we're going to see a balance of those two sets of guards. I think we're going to see a lot of Malachi Smith and Hunter Salas in this game, because we talked about what they're going to need defensively from this team. I think those two are going to play a huge part in that, because we know Mahaney and Johnson are going to play 35, 38, probably 40 minutes tonight. So it's going to be really critical that those two, that Salas and Smith, are playing well. And I think that's going to happen. I see that happening. I see Malachi definitely playing well. We saw, it does seem like Hunter Salas seems like he's about ready to turn a corner. I don't know if it happens this year or if it's going to happen in the next year. But we've seen the signs of the guy and the player that he can be. So going into this one, overall, we know what the keys for the Zags are. We know what the keys for St. Mary's are. These two teams know each other so well. The Vegas line, I believe I saw it, was 2.5 in favor of the Zags. How do I think this is going to go? Honestly, this one is as close of a matchup as I think we're going to see. I think it's going to be the best WCC title game we have seen in a long, long time. And this one's hard to pick. Like, my heart obviously wants to go St. Mary's. My head doesn't know which way to go. My head may sort of kind of lean Gonzaga's direction, but my head also doesn't want to discount what St. Mary's can do on the defensive side. And also, if they play offensively well during the first half, in addition to the second, because I feel like, because I'm one who definitely believes that St. Mary's has more lost. It's been more self-inflicted than what Gonzaga has done. Even breaking the press against Gonzaga, it was a lot of some forced, but some also unforced errors. And I think that's the critical part. It feels like to me that St. Mary's struggles in the first half have been self-imposed for the most part, not completely. And they play well. I think we're going to see St. Mary's win this game. If they don't have a good first half, I might lean Gonzaga's way. And the implications of this game. They're both getting in the tournament. They're both going to be probably a top 5 seed. We know this. The implications for Gonzaga. With some of the shifting at the top lines or whatnot, there's still a chance that this win could get Gonzaga to the 2 seed. I don't think it's very likely, but there's still that opportunity. There's still that window for them to jump. And with a loss, I don't think it changes much. I think they'll probably stay right there. Like they're on a 3 line right now. Maybe a loss drops them to the 4. I'm not entirely sure. It may not matter. Maybe they'll stay right there at the 3 line. I think that they're going to somewhere between 2 and 4. 2 at the peak if they win this game. 4 at the low end if they lose this game and things go all wacky on that 3 line. For St. Mary's, I think their floor is probably right where they are in most bracketologies, 5 seed. I think that's probably about right now. If they get this win, this is a game that's a game that could launch them to the 4 line. I think that's a strong possibility if St. Mary's is able to get this one, get the auto bid, and jump to the 4. If they are the 4, I think this puts them in position to be sent to Sacramento, which obviously is the most ideal scenario for St. Mary's. I think if Gonzaga ends up like a 3 or a 4, I think Denver is probably where they're going to end up. UCLA is obviously still in the mix. UCLA is probably going to get sent to Sacramento. Arizona is still in the mix. There's a solid chance they'll end up in Denver, but we'll see. But I think like a win for Gonzaga almost assures them that they'll go to Denver. I think a win for St. Mary's almost assures them that they'll go to Sacramento. So there are big implications for both of these teams for the tournament, for the NCAA tournament. And that's going to be, and that's what we're really playing for here. It's like, all right, you're almost playing for as close to a home court as you possibly can. Because if St. Mary's doesn't win, I've seen brackets where they've been sent to Albany, they've been sent to Orlando. I think those are the two I've primarily seen them matched up in. Gonzaga has been, I think they also had I think maybe they had a Greensboro. I think I saw in Orlando for them as well. Denver, obviously. Sacramento's a possibility. But this is going to be about, for this game, this is pure, utter rivalry game. This is bragging rights. This is Drew Timmy's last WCC game. This is Logan Johnson's last WCC game. This is going to be it for Rasheer Bolton. This is it for Alex Dukas. This could be it for Alex Dukas. This could be it for Kyle Bowen. This could be it for Anton Watson. There's a lot of guys who are going to be playing their last WCC game. So I expect some big performances out of those guys who this is their last time playing in this building, last time playing in front of this crowd. And I expect this to be a slugfest. This is going to go back and forth. I think that the little things are going to make the difference, as it always does between these two teams. Who can get out to a hot start first? Who can limit their mistakes? Who can make their free throws? Who can stay out of foul trouble? All these little things will add up, and they will make a difference when it comes to what we see for Tuesday night, and then all the implications and whatnot for the NCAA tournament. All right, well, that'll wrap it up. It is going to be a short episode. We will talk more about it. Try to get another episode probably before Selection Sunday and talk a little bit more about all of this and the implications and everything else. So, again, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter, on TikTok, at Post by Zach. Be sure to share the podcast on your favorite streaming service. It is title game day. I'm excited. I know you're excited. Let's get into it, and I will catch you next time.